I want to thank all my former students for coming. You've been to so many readings of mine, but I want to thank my current students, Michael and Jack. You have A's for the semester. You should come just so nobody thinks otherwise. This is the other book that came out in the fall. I want to read a couple poems from Kingdom of Throat Stuck Luck, and then I want to read you new poems from the book of poems I'm writing about the West, where Mathis wanted to move. Do you know what a kora is? K2 knows what a kora is.
No.
Tell us what a kora is. K2.
Kora is a 21-stringed instrument. It's the master instrument of the oral historians of the Mande diaspora, the Malinkes people, the people of the Mali Empire. And it is you could liken it to a banjo with 21 strings.
Or a sitar.
Or a sitar.
Right, but it's a gourd, again, a gourd-like instrument. Difficult to keep in tune. I don't know how many, difficult to play. I don't know how many people could do that. This is, I mentioned a kora in the first line of this poem. Your own ox head mask as proof. Think about that line. Your own ox head mask as proof. Michael, right? I must inquire after the kora's lantern with regard to the spoken mice. One moment they are absent, then we say summer solstice, and they pool as rainwater and sawdust droppings of a horse. Am I too explicit? Do you feel the full wept of my desire to cry, and in the crying one day dissolve? You say it is impossible to subsist on a diet of tree bark and pneumonia. You repeat that I am a fraud and point to your own oxhead mask as proof. I don't want your remembrance of bread. I could never eat the zero you drew on my back. Frankly, ever since then, I can no longer count. Even your imagined tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. I consider the loss of independent saliva. I regard you as very thick stew. I must require you to string me a sitar in minutes to test your exactitude. The tea kettle is boiling over, and with it, your voice of warning tries to get me to grow a beard.
Wow.
I just saw a poem, here it is, that I hadn't planned on reading, but For Good. I think the title is the doubleness of things being for the welfare of people, but also things being final. This book talks a lot about incarnations. How many times we've come into the body, how many times we've split. And this poem begins the second section, and the speaker says, I awoke in Mandalay among several guinea fowl. So there's a new movement that begins in the second section of the book. And I hope the double meaning of For Good comes out. It references this ant. It was a traumatic experience for me as a child. I knew I was spiritually alive. I made a pet of an ant, an insect, when I was 6. And I brought it in the house. I'd been playing with it outside, and my grandmother, who raised me, gave me a medicine bottle to keep it in. And I forgot to put air holes in the thing. And I named the ant Georgie. Oh, it's awful. It's Georgie the ant story. But I realized what happens when we colonize the universe, when we give it our name, and we don't let it be it. And I wept and wept and wept when that ant died that night. It was, I felt as if something huge had changed in my life. For good. I awoke in Mandalay among several guinea fowl. I smelled the resin of many births and previous smiles designed to cope. Examined my hands. on which you'll see the staph infections of eels. Rust spots below my eyes suggest the guise of an underwater guitar. You could and you could not, but you certainly might try. Toss a rope, and the bite of an inland bay might extend a loop of mind. They brought sheep to the village, each dead animal about to bilk the locals into an expectation of complete protein. How long a length of inanition is contained in the reverse swallowing habit of a 9-year-old boy? I keep precisely 7 ants with which I sleep in a jar at my bedside. Each represents a different chakra. I don't know which, although I killed one when I was 6 that I'd named Georgie. More like a burning stone, more like a menhir in the spine. A small but potent blur waiting backwards to retrieve every drop of my spent adult talk salt. I would never betray you, nor portray your darling insect ear as my own, nor use your mouth as my life. When I leave the world this time, hopefully it will be for good. That's very sweet of you. Thank you. Let me read you the title poem. I think I know it, Kingdom of Throat Stuck Luck, and then I'll move on to the other new poems. This was an example, and my students can tell you, I say that when something scares you sometimes in a poem, that's what you need to keep writing. And this was an example of a line that came to me that really scared me. We were at the mercy of not having had anyone in the family die. And I went, whoa, what? I can't write that. What does that mean? But I decided to write it out and see what happened with the poem. Kingdom of Throat Stuck Luck. We were at the mercy of not having had anyone in the family die. We sang our song, we committed our talk, and working late seemed in our best interest. I sought everything crummy, an abomination of a raised arm at the back of a schoolroom. Without making a telegram of historical butter, the best we could do was share. Alexandria had been cut off from Egypt for many centuries by salt lakes. We experienced the torturing impact of a candle, unconnected to the biography of lightning. When one of us pointed to the moon, it meant sprained right ankle. When someone hacked a hunk of goldfish onto a hanky, it meant, see the brilliant rain. Without history, we went on wearing sombreros. We distanced ourselves from hospital corridors and sarcophagi, from whiskey-colored wind, from our esophageal amnesia. Time and again we emerged from the kingdom of throat-stuck luck. All we knew was a pale blue light, the advantage of a back window, and an ensorceling phlegm with which to coat the long days of the throat. This book of poems I'm working on, The Rain That Doesn't Reach the Ground, is a book of poems about the American West that Mathis also loves. Particularly, this book is located in Colorado. And I'm really trying to write a book that plays with Western mythos, but that doesn't play into all the cliches of manifest destiny and going and living in the West. Trying to actually interrogate those in some ways, complicate those concepts. The poems are varied. Some are prose poems, some are weird dialogues. I have a series of letters. There's a great poet from the West, Richard Hugo, lived in Montana for many years. And he has a book of letters, and some of these poems are letters to various people too. They're titled Letter to Michelle or Letter to Ray from different locations. So I'm really trying to get at a lot of different modalities in the book. I want to read you a more narrative poem. Part of the work I've been doing is visiting the dead, visiting the graves in the West, because I think that we tend to either live in the mythologized history of known people, quote-unquote important people, or we live in the present or we live in the future. But I've been thinking about all the unknown people. And there's a lot of children, for example. Mary Ann and I have been hitting these cemeteries. You would be surprised how many children are in these cemeteries. And this is a little poem for Katya Whitcomb. March 12, 1867. She died at 3 years, 8 months, and 12 days. We finally found she's buried on the Buckeye Ranch, and I called Eldon Ackerman, who's the owner of the ranch, and he let us come visit the grave. He said no one had ever wanted to visit her grave. And he walked Mary Ann and me up to the grave. It was very beautiful. Katya Whitcomb. At least they gave you a most beautiful place. If I had loved even your finger, I would have grieved. Somehow I do, here on the old Buckeye in what was once the town of Box Elder. Your parents farmed hard. All I know seems sudden, shocked in your sod. We honor your death as we might grieve thanks to the moon for a grand companion. I said the creek is your magnificent mixed blood way. I always wanted an Indian mother called Kate, a father who didn't give in to the hardship of dirt. No one is playing in your yard. Eldon Ackerman ranches it now, tells me within the first hour of friendship that he and his wife will also be buried on this rise. He loves a perfect stranger. He's taken the end of the day to guide us to your grave, surrounded still by rail your father split, splinters decaying right down into your space. I'm sure you were beautiful, little one. You barely wore gingham. I could likely count in my palm butterfly time you caught in 3 brief years. You are flying away. You have been here since 1867. You are a hummingbird hovering near my wife's red hair, probing for snow melt from the mountains, drawing closer, moving sunset into us. Prickly pears at your feet keep away the snakes. Eldon says he killed 30 rattlers just last year. Your parents had 160 acres of homestead, proved it up with a structure within 12 months. Your solitary grave is all that's left of the original ranch. Even the rumor of 2 strays at your side are someone's dream of Indians and their unmarked hard. Life in the prairie winds breaks your breath back across the rawhide flats. You are floating and you are ribbed deep in the earth, even in my cough as I gentle your dust back to the car and drive it all the way to Cheyenne. Didn't you once say I love you? Wasn't I not there to answer me too? If I had loved even a finger or toe, dear one, I would have shamed the town into your name. Box Elder is gone. The Buckeye Ranch, too. Your bones remain, dusting the crust of cattle caught in the graze, giving us what little meat we might be lucky enough to eat before we sink into the sinking sound of grass browning now. She was rumored, well, it wasn't the rumor.